Hi, and welcome to another edition of Newsmakers, Journal of the Vaccine Year. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Thursday. No, it's not. It's Wednesday, May 19th. Who the hell knows what day it is? And we are honored to and delighted to welcome back Carla Marinucci, Chief California Correspondent for Politico and co-author of the Politico California newsletter, which if you're not subscribing to, you really should be if you want to know what's going on. Carla, how are you doing? You got your shots and everything?
I do, both shots. Life is good,
So you're out and about. You're not confined to
not confined. And it is interesting that California is still sticking to the mandates in some respects, at least until June 15th. The CDC guidelines were kind of like, well, let's do it on an honor system. And, everybody's, if you got vaccinated, you're okay. But Gavin Newsom's like, no, let's hold off a little bit. Let's wait until June 15th. California's being a very complicated state. A lot of businesses out there wondering, how do we protect our workers? So they're going to hold until June 15th. That's created, they're giving the Republicans, Jerry, some ammunition here. There he goes again. Gavin Newsom, the dictator, but I don't know. I think a lot of people, I'm out even walking the trails here in the East Bay, and some people are wearing masks still. I think people are not comfortable with just giving it up all of a sudden.
Same thing here. I've been going to a lot of Little League games, and all the moms and dads are all covered up. Okay, we want to start talking about the recall. I don't want to give away the ending here, but Calbuzz has already written, and Gavin's gonna beat the recall and emerge stronger than ever, and sort of declared this all a clown show. I know you have a slightly different handicapping take on it, but let's start with the basics, because I know you and Roland have your eye on that 15-acre place next to Harry and Meghan.
That's right.
In Montecito. So if you're talking to your future neighbors here, they may not be following as closely as some others. Okay, so first of all, explain how the recall came about and who's behind it.
Well, of course, this is the 6th recall attempt on Gavin Newsom, and it did stick because some of the proponents, Republicans, wanting to take out Gavin Newsom, as of last November, were pretty much out of gas when they were given an extension by a judge because of COVID to collect those signatures necessary, the 1.5 million signatures they needed. And that gave them until March, and they got what they needed by then. And so there is going to be a recall election sometime this year, probably November. That has opened the floodgates, Jerry, for candidates. I think there's already about 60 candidates running for governor, but only a handful of Republicans who are known to most Californians, or many Californians, including former San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer, businessman John Cox, who was beaten in a historic landslide by Gavin Newsom in 2018, former House member Doug Osee, who we interviewed this week, and of course reality star Caitlyn Jenner.
All right, we're gonna break down the field. Let me. So the election will be sometime in November, and of course we should also mention, as we've talked about before, the other thing that gave them a push, the recall supporters, was Gavin's famous French Laundry dinner with our friend Jason. And okay, so but on the election, there will be two questions, correct? One is recall, yay or nay, and if you want the recall, then you vote
who do you want to replace Gavin Newsom? And I think this is where, I just give a little bit of caveat. I think most people will agree with you and Calbuzz that in a Democratic state where Democrats lead the voter registration by 20 points, look, Gavin Newsom is probably very secure going into this recall. But I don't think you can totally bet the farm on that because of that first question, the yay or nay question. Republicans are telling me their voters are more energized, more motivated. They want to get rid of this guy, and they are more likely to turn out in November when this election is likely to be. And any other additions to the numbers of Republicans running is only going to help them, in the sense that should, like Richard Gwinnell, one of the Trump administration appointees, super conservative, get into the race. Well, he brings some people with him, some Trump supporters with him that are going to turn out to vote for him. Caitlyn Jenner, the same. Kevin Faulconer, the same. So the fact is, they just want to get over that 50+1 line here in California. They think that they can do it. They're telling me, well, Gavin Newsom's approval ratings are only at 52%. This isn't going to be hard. If that's the case, you could conceivably have somebody elected governor of California who gets only 20% of the vote that day. We're going to see how it works out. But the bottom line is certainly the Newsom people are aware of this. And his campaign team, A. Smith et al., are being very, very aggressive on this front, which is why you're seeing Gavin out there, throwing checks and
yeah. He's doing the Oprah car giveaway tour. That's an interesting
you
take.
Get a car and you get a check, right? Exactly.
I hadn't heard that take before, actually, which is, it's 2021. And of course, that's a big election year here in Santa Barbara. We have our mayor's race, but be that as it may.
Yeah, it's an off year. Are the Democrats going to basically spoon? Yeah.
Democrats aren't exactly known for going out. And
right.
So that really, the larger number of candidates could actually help the Republicans, because then you have 27 sex workers and
yeah,
72.
And all of them bring somebody to vote on that yes thing, on that yes question, and you could get over that line if the Republicans are already doing phone banking, trying to get people to turn out. They're firing up their people, every way they can to make sure to recall Gavin Newsom. So that's the question: is who's going to have the better turnout? And right. I think Democrats probably going to bite some nails over that one.
Yeah, and then add in a couple of power outages over the summer.
Right. We've already got, as Malibu, Topanga Canyon, already feeling the heat literally on some of these wildfires, and we've only just begun that season. And California heading into another historic drought, with I believe it's 35 counties already declared. Look at California's 2021 drought is just starting here. And is there going to be a statewide water emergency? Yes. How's that going to affect people? How's that going to affect anger? When people's lawns turn brown again, they got to go back to drought resistant plants, the roses die, you get it.
Let alone, if we have another variant of COVID and have a resurgence or something.
That's another one. And I have to say, on the wildfires angle, I think the real thing that Newsom's people have got to be sweating is planned power outages. We saw those last year. I here in Oakland had at least 4 or 5 days without any power. And that was millions of people that did in California because of planned power outages, trying to control the possibility of those wildfires. If that becomes a big thing in the months heading into this recall, who knows how that could affect who turns out, who's fired up to turn out. Right. And, I don't think that Newsom people could take anything for granted there.
All right. Well, which just then doubles the stakes on the plain fact that this recall, very different than 2003, when I think you had more serious issues at play, and you had a superstar who was in the race. This is really kind of a circus. You got one guy hauling a bear around, and then Caitlyn Jenner, whatever she's doing. Let's start with her. I know you've covered a lot of stories about that.
Look, I don't know if we have never seen a candidate like this get into a major race, to run the world's fifth largest economy. And really, we have no idea what the real rationale is for her campaign. Is it, just a brand building exercise?
We've never seen a candidate like this. You don't mean a trans candidate. That's not your point.
Yeah, no. I'm talking about a reality TV show star who has shown really no interest in politics anywhere in her history, as far as I can see. Only very cursory observations about politics, but unlike Arnold Schwarzenegger, who we know like put up a ballot measure, had a big interest in physical fitness, was the president's the chair of the president's physical fitness initiatives and Special Olympics, etc. After school,
Married to a Kennedy.
Married to a Kennedy. I mean, for every reason. Schwarzenegger put together a huge policy team, Arnold University, they called it, to basically school him in everything he needed to know before he even declared for that. So that's the kind of the mystifying angle on this one with Caitlyn Jenner. She didn't seem to know that district attorneys are not appointed by the governor. She seems to think as governor, she can pardon people. It goes on and on.
So her big coming out, so to speak, was the Sean Hannity interview last week, and it was kind of a big nothing burger, no?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she didn't get asked any hard questions on that, and she hasn't sit down for any. This is the first gubernatorial candidate in my memory of any stature who has not sat down at length with any publication here in California. I think she did a short one with the LA Times, Maria Laganja, but we haven't heard from her any details on California policy. And by the way, we haven't seen any major supporters, any major endorsers, any really major policy positions.
But she's seen it. Is she not seen as a sort of a Trump surrogate in the thing?
In a sense, she kind of broke with Trump last year on some of the transgender issues in the military. But on the other hand, she came out on Hannity embracing him to the full on the wall and immigration policy. So, and on the issue of transgender kids in sports, yet, Trump hasn't endorsed her, although, she's got Trump's team behind her, Brad Parscale, Stephen Chung, who was White House rapid response director there. So I think, there are definitely Trump people involved, and they've got the Trump mailing list in their pocket as well. So it's something to watch just for the sheer, weirdness factor of someone getting into this race who really has shown, like Jerry, the last thing she did before she declared.
I love this. Yeah.
Was to go on The Masked Singer, I mean, that, have we seen a candidate like that before? No.
Well, there is Sarah Palin, but okay. And my favorite thing about it, though, is you are at least among the cognoscente, which is to say the 12 political reporters left in California, widely known for whenever anybody runs who hasn't run before, the first thing you do is call up your friends in the
right
in the Secretary of State's office and find out how many times the person's voted. And
that was
inevitably
you taught me that.
Inevitably you nail them, and inevitably they've got some excuse. But this was just mind-boggling, because she said she hadn't voted when in fact she had. What was that all about?
Yeah, she told CNN wanted to know if she voted for Trump, and she said, no, I said it. She was very, very detailed in her response. No, I sat it out. I decided there was really nothing, that really energized me on the ballot. And, what's the use of voting for Republican in California anyway for president? That's kind of a lost cause. So I went golfing instead. That's what she said.
Even though I'm against trans people in sports.
Yeah. First of all, on that ballot, there were at least 12 major issues, including cash bail, affirmative action. I could go on and on. It was one of the most expensive ballots in California history. But that's aside, we did a story about Caitlyn Jenner's voting record, which is extremely spotty in California. She's only voted in a third of the total of the elections at which she was qualified to vote. But she did vote in that election. So why she lied about it is kind of a head scratcher and nothing, most politicians lie about voting when they haven't, but she went
This is the first. This is the first.
That was the first. I don't know whether she forgot or was mixing it up with another election, or just didn't want to admit voting for Trump. That said, as a candidate for governor to say you don't see anything on the ballot that's that important.
Prop
And won't vote for
13,
president
Prop 13.
anyway. You know,
Proposition 13 was on that ballot too.
yeah,
as
yeah.
I recall.
I vote for president anyway. It's a lost cause. I mean, I don't know. That doesn't seem to be an argument that can generate much support. I think the question is now, is she going to really stick this out? I mean, remember that she, like Gavin this week, came up with his tax returns, right? Because there is a law now in California signed last year by the legislature that any candidate for governor has to produce 5 years of income taxes. And is she going to want to do that? Her net worth is, in the hundreds, tens of millions of dollars. She's got a lot of interests in the Kardashian family fortune there. Is she going to want to lay that out for the public in California? That's going to be interesting. She hasn't technically filed yet. So we're going to wait and see if that happens. But that new law is also going to be kind of interesting for John Cox.
Yeah, let's talk about him a little bit. So he's a businessman, I think originally from Chicago or Illinois. He's
Illinois, right. Ran for office multiple times too.
Multiple states.
Multiple states, right? But I think it was one for president at one point, didn't he? But
he got stomped last time by Gavin, but now he's campaigning with a bear, so that'll probably make.
And I got to tell you, I was there at the thing where he rolled out the bear in Sacramento. To see a 7 foot tall, 1,000-pound Kodiak bear like 3 feet away from you with just a little, string going, like it's like, really? I was wondering if you were going to have to write it sort of in a tragic, turn of events, candidate's bear mauled the press corps, that kind of story. I think, of course, he's gotten huge blowback from animal rights groups.
Where is the bear from?
The bear is from a Southern California wild animal park, which apparently has had a couple of questions in terms of their treatment of bears. While he was doing the event, they're throwing the bear Oreo cookies, and to keep him drugged or modified, mollified. John Cox said, look, everybody should get treated as well as this bear does. He's been raised in captivity, etc. But the bottom line is, look, he's putting $5 million toward ads showing him and the bear, how he's going to be a beast to California's beauty, Gavin Newsom. That's an ad that was done by Fred Davis, who, is known for crazy.
A noted Montecito resident, another one.
Oh, Fred Davis is? I didn't know that, but Fred is a wild guy, just a wonderful interview and super creative, always manages to come up with wild concepts for.
Well, he's got the theory that 90% of everything is noise, and so you really have to do something extraordinary to break through the noise.
And I have to say, John Cox did cut through all that clutter with the bear. The question is, if he can deliver, any kind of real message to voters out there.
What is his message?
His message is that Newsom is blowing his management of the state, and that Cox could do it better. That's.
All right. Well, I think the most serious person, at least from a political perspective, is Kevin Faulconer, the former mayor of San Diego, who's gotten in. I wonder, because there was a lot of talk about him running in 2022 when the actual election for a governor is he not sort of kind of blowing his credibility a little bit by getting in with this, clown car of candidates?
Yeah, I think Kevin Faulconer is sort of the most viable and serious candidate in this point, in the sense of he has come out with the most detailed proposals, including a tax plan in the last week that would basically scrap the first $100,000 joint filing for everybody in California. That's got to be a
personal income tax.
Personal income tax, right? That's his answer. With Newsom talking about a $76 billion surplus here, Faulconer saying, "Hey, everybody's overtaxed here in California. Let's just cut people's taxes instead of giving them a one-time check." I think that might resonate with people. He's also been very detailed on the homeless issue, saying that San Diego, the city that he managed, was one of the few cities to actually reduce homelessness. I was with him recently in Emeryville, where he was pointing to the homeless encampments along the I-80 freeway there, which are really, really sort of dramatic to look at and sad, and saying, as mayor in San Diego, I never allowed those along the freeway. It's too dangerous, and we've got to do something about that. I think these kind of things could resonate with people in California, particularly on the homeless issue, on the law and order issue. But the fact is, look, Faulconer has the same problem as every other Republican in California, in that he's got an R after his name. And the Newsom people are trying to tie him to Trump. He did appear recently at a Devin Nunes Freedom Fest talking to that MAGA crowd. And, you know, he has to straddle these two sort of interests in the Republican Party, the moderates who want to keep Trump at arm's length, and the MAGA people who want to just, you know, bear hug him, right?
And that's where all the energy is, though, is the MAGA people, right?
And that's where the energy is, on the turnout, on fundraising and everywhere else. So he cannot afford to say anything about Trump. That's the interesting thing, Jerry. This week, I went to all of these Republican candidates and said, well, how are you feeling about this leadership issue in the Republican Party? Kevin McCarthy pushing Liz Cheney out, and Elise Stefanik saying, well, Trump is the Republican Party leader. There is no question about that. Every one of them say, I'm focused on California, and Trump who, you know, it's kind of like that. They just don't want to go there with Trump at all. And, you know, I guess who can blame them? However, remember, Trump is saying he's going to start doing rallies. Maybe he'll come out here. He's got that Trump team working Caitlyn Jenner's campaign. So we may get to see him out here. Who knows? I think the Newsom team would love that.
I can hardly wait. All right, let's talk about the governor a little bit. It's early. It's not quite noon, so I've only received half a dozen fundraising emails from him so far, but it looks like they're going to raise a ton of dough for this. And I guess, can he now use it for the recall and then just roll it over to his campaign fund for next year?
I don't know that answer to that question.
I bet he can, because it's all Gavin Newsom.
Yeah, I think you may be right on that. That, you know, the bottom line is, I mean, everything does seem to be going his way right now. But yes, on the fundraising front, they've got to be prepared, and they've already got ads out there. I mean, look, he used his budget last week to do kind of almost a victory lap around the state, talking about, you know, the $76 billion surplus and this huge, you know, $268 billion spending plan, which seemed to have a little bit for everybody.
400 different projects or items that
it's crazy. I was up in Sacramento. We went through a 2-hour press conference with him. You know, he goes like line by line. He's a budget nerd and goes line by line through these budgets. But as you said, he called it a historic, a transformational budget, not a budget that plays small ball. But of course, the Republicans are saying, well, he's throwing money at everything. But the fact is, he's throwing money at a lot of things that people want to have money thrown at. And that's including education. You know, of course, the $12 billion in $600 stimulus checks to Californians who make up to $75,000 a year, and you get more if you have kids. $500 more if you have kids. I think you know, you're talking about money for housing. You know, $10 billion. You're talking about homelessness, $12 billion. I could go down the list, but the fact is that education is the big one, and education is, I think, the place where he's going to have to answer questions. Are those kids going to be back in school in September?
Well, exactly, because that's not, and as I understand it now, they're going to give parents the choice to stay remote. I know that's the case in Santa Barbara, and I think local school boards are going to have that.
And Jerry, this is an issue. I've talked to a teacher up here in the Bay Area who is now teaching half his class in person and half remote in a local high school, which means he's got to wear the mask because of the kids here in the classroom. At least he will have to until June. But how do you do that? How do you teach kids who are sitting in front of you and a bunch who aren't? and try to make that work. I mean, it seems like such an incredible challenge for teachers. You've got a lot of teachers who do not want to come back. You've got groups like the California Nurses Association saying, no, it's too soon to end all this mask thing. So, Newsom with the public schools, that is going to be his biggest issue.
Well, because you just named two of the biggest special interests in Sacramento, the California Teachers Association and the Nurses Association, both of which historically have been allied with Newsom, but the politics of this get really kind of gnarly about who's on first and who wants what in terms of going back to school.
Totally. I mean, so this is where, he tried to present an upside on his education budget, talking about, an additional $15 billion for K through 12. And he wants to give extended, $20 billion basically to extend kindergarten to every 4-year-old in the state, creating basically a new grade in the state of California, really big ideas, and talking about how this will be like a one-time investment that'll really pay off for California. Those arguments could work for people, but the fact is, if their kids aren't back in the classroom, and that could be upset, as you mentioned, by variants, by people not wearing the masks or not getting vaccinated, and who knows how. We've seen other countries, look, the Seychelles, the most vaccinated country in the world, having a resurgence because of variants and unvaccinated people. So
yeah. And there's an interesting, it's not an exact parallel, but politically, you sort of see Joe Biden calculating that his political future depends on governing. So he's going to push through all this trillions of dollars of spending with only Democratic votes, and assume that when people get the money, when people get the programs, when people see what government can do, they're going to reward him. While the Republicans are over here fighting about Dr. Seuss and Liz Cheney and everything. But those, being woke and cancel culture, those cultural issues have a lot of energy. There's a lot of energy politically that attaches to grievance. And as you said earlier, to anger. And you see things like Kevin McCarthy, pontificating in Washington about this is socialism. And then he's going to be back home taking credit for all this money.
That's right.
That the feds deliver. So I just wonder, how I think it'll work better, a governing argument in California than it does nationally, where we're so divided. But I really wonder about the efficacy of that. The other thing is, of course, Gavin isn't really telling the truth about this budget. There isn't a $76 billion surplus, according to the Ledge analyst.
Yeah.
It's only half of that. He's taking $12 billion out of reserves, and it's a lot. I'm going to have H.D. Palmer on next week from the finance department to answer for this, because the last time he was on, he told me we were screwed and there was no money. So yeah, he's got a lot to answer for.
Yeah,
all right.
Gavin's got a much rosier picture than he ever believed at the beginning of this pandemic. So that is the truth there. You're right. It's how many billions he can brag about.
Well, and you and I go back to, covering Gavin to when Willie Brown put him on the parking commission back before the last ice age. And, we've seen Gavin in a lot of different, we've seen him apologetic and abject. And the Gavin I hate the most is the triumphalist Gavin, which is what we're seeing now. So I'm not sure that's how that's going to play either.
Yeah, and the thin-skinned Gavin, which I got to say, being at that press conference for 2 hours, he doesn't like a lot of hard questions. It's he kind of rolls the eyes and gets very uptight, and that's not the best Gavin to see either, I have to say.
No, it's not. All right. So bottom line, handicap this thing for me. Is the recall gonna pass? And if so, who's going to be our next governor?
I think he. If I had to bet on it today, of course, remember I said Trump would never be elected or never run, remember, keep this all in mind. But I think as it looks,
you weren't alone, Carla.
As it looks now, I think he survives this, because I think California's economic situation only gets better. I think COVID is under control for the most part. I think, yes, a lot of this recall is going to end up looking like a circus, and a very expensive one. The estimates being around $400 million. I think California.
That's the cost the taxpayers are putting on the election, not what's going to be spent by the.
Now it's going to be spent, right? Exactly. I mean, for taxpayers are going to have to foot this bill. By the time it's over, I think he will, like Feinstein did, come out the winner in that respect. And when he does, that means any Republican challenger is immediately discounted, has the rug pulled out from under them. And I think that pretty much lets him sail into the next election, 2022, with no worries. And we'll see.
Yeah, you mentioned Senator Feinstein. She was, there was a recall against her when she was mayor in 1983, mayor of San Francisco. And as you recall, she wept when the signatures were filed, but it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened.
That's right. It gave her peace on life. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, she, there were, kind of extreme wingnut people who would put it on, the White Panthers, as I recall, and others, sort of like this. And her campaign, run by our old friend Clint Riley,
that's right,
publisher of the Examiner. Yeah. He said, parenthetically, managed to really define it as, this is a small group of strange people. And that's exactly what Gavin's doing. Strange people being Republicans in California. But
that is exactly right.
Every time they mention is the Republican recall, That's
right. And they're making it a Trump recall. Yeah, absolutely right. That is what's happening. And if that strategy holds, I think he wins, barring some crazy developments on wildfires or outages or some other, headline grabbing story, scandal, whatever, as in politics can come up. I don't know. But the bottom line is, I mean, right now it looks like he sails through it.
All right. Let me ask you real quick about a bunch of other Californians and how they're doing it, people that you cover. We just talked about Senator Feinstein. And for the first time, the UCIGS poll shows her as underwater in terms of her approval rate. I guess it's the second time it happened.
Haven't we seen
people just seem to have discovered that she's older than the Golden Gate Bridge? I mean, this is not in a big secret. Is that what it's all about, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, look, excuse me, but hasn't she been underwater before? I mean, this is a woman who's
once before in that poll. That's the only time.
But I think, look, I don't think that bothers her. I don't think that, she doesn't care about the poll numbers. Her poll numbers have always been kind of weak here in California, in the sense of, like, the Democrats last cycle, tried to put Kevin De Leon up against her. They didn't even endorse her own party. Remember, she's faced this kind of stuff before in California. It doesn't seem to faze her. She's going to go when she's going to go. And most people say that's,
I'm glad you finally come around to my previous minority opinion on this. They're going to drag her out of there. All right. But her new running mate, Alex Padilla, the former Secretary of State, former state senator, now junior senator, took Kamala Harris's place. Actually, he used to work for Feinstein a long time ago. Now he's really running very hard to the left. He's going to be on the ballot in 2 years. Gavin appointed him. Again, It's not yet noon, and I've only received half a dozen emails from him. I mean, he's kind of everywhere, isn't he? What's your take?
He has hit the ground running in a very big way, and leaving nothing to chance on his reelection, because he's trying to, as you said, block any progressive challenge from the left, because he's kind of a moderate Democrat. They don't want to use that word anymore, but he is in the Feinstein mold. So what he's done is gone out and get every Democrat has already endorsed him for 2022. He's locked them all down. He is raising big money. First Latino U.S. Senator in California, and he's become very, very astute about being all over, the Sunday shows and every place else, taking a high profile position on environment, the committees he's on. So
immigration as well, right?
Yeah, immigration too. I mean, as the son of immigrants, I mean, I think Padilla has done everything right. Of course, he has the same campaign team as Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris, A. Smith et al. In San Francisco, and they are guiding him. And I think they have blocked effectively. It was, a lot of rumor was like, could Ro Khanna, for instance, the progressive House member out of Silicon Valley, could he challenge him? And Khanna has actually raised more money than Padilla at this point, and hasn't ruled it out. I've talked to him about it. But the fact is, every day Padilla has racked up just about every endorsement possible in California, and every group, and is raking in the money. So I think that is a defensive move that looks very, very smart at this point.
And then one of Gavin's other appointments, Rob Bonta, the Bay Area Assemblyman, to replace Javier Becerra, who was the Attorney General. It looks like he may not get a free pass, though.
Yeah, I mean, you're already right, because he's very progressive, of course. First Filipino American in that job. That's a source of great pride to the API community. But the fact is, this Republicans think the AG spot is the one place they can maybe grab a hold. We've also got Lanhee Chen running possibly in controller. But the fact is that on the law and order issues, on criminal justice issues, they think there's an opening with Rob Bonta, who they think has been too liberal, of the Chesa Boudin DA, George Gascon DA sort of profile, and that there's a weakness there. So you're already seeing from LA, Nathan Hochman, who's a Republican, who's been endorsed by Steve Cooley. He's got a lot of credentials in LA, head of the Ethics Commission there. He's already declared. I think that you're going to see a lively contest.
And this DA in Sacramento as well, right? Her name is.
Yeah, the DA in Sacramento as well. She's also somebody who's going to challenge him, has already declared. So you're going to see that is the one place where Republicans think they can take out Rob Bonta, that they feel he's a weak candidate. I think you're going to see Bonta is also represented by the same political consulting group of A. Smith et al. So look for that to be a hard knuckle contest.
No, I think so. And, and I think they're right about the AG being a spot, because, you talked about these progressive DAs in San Francisco and LA. Well, there's a recall of campaigns against both of them.
Both of them, correct.
And there's a big split among district attorneys in California, among prosecutors, about that whole theory of the case. And so, we remember that Kamala Harris's first statewide campaign, it took a couple of weeks to count all the votes. She only won by about 50,000 elected AG. So I think that's one to watch. What's your take on Kevin McCarthy? I mean, you listen to this guy in Washington. I mean, he's the ultra Trump sycophant. He's just, what state is he from? I mean, it's just astonishing that he gets away with this.
Remember that, his congressional district is like, he's a lock in that congressional district, Bakersfield. I mean, that's what's protecting him. There is nobody, there's a couple of Democrats who are considering running or have already declared. The fact is, nobody's been able to take him out. His Democratic challengers always raise a ton of money, millions of dollars. And that's giving him sort of the confidence that he can go hard right MAGA. He wants to be speaker, and he's twisting himself into pretzels politically. First of all, taking Trump into account on the January 6th insurrection, saying the president was responsible, then turning around almost the next day. I mean, it's just amazing to watch the flip-flops this guy has managed in office. And yet, at this point, he looks like, he could be the next speaker. Let's remember, though, he tried for that job once before. I think it was 2015 he was trying. He ended up having to pull out because Republicans didn't have faith in him and his politics. And
he went on CNN and said, "Oh yeah, it's true that the whole Benghazi thing is just a big ruse to get Hillary Clinton."
That's right. That got him in trouble. There was also reports about an affair that kind of tanked that chance back then. So it's going to be interesting to watch, if he's going to get any serious competition. Should the Republicans look like they could take back the House. Pelosi's got a very slender margin there to work with.
Well, yeah, and one of the known unknowables is of course reapportionment, and it looks like she could lose the majority just by reapportionment.
Just on that,
I mean,
exactly.
we've lost a seat here in California. New York's lost a seat. Illinois has lost a seat. Florida, Texas, both picking up. That's the one thing I wonder about McCarthy, because we do have this independent commission in California. It's not.
Yeah.
It's much less of a political exercise than it used to be. You know, any chance that he kind of gets squeezed a little bit. I've heard that it's going to be the 25th in our area.
That's right. That's the Mike Garcia seat, and which would explain why he's going, to the Devin Nunes Freedom Fest events and he's going hard right, MAGA. And remember, 25th, he only won by 333 votes. That is a swing district. But he's going really hard to the right. A lot of people think maybe he's trying to position himself for some kind of Fox News commentator sort of job, because that seat's going to get cut. You're right. I mean, Pelosi's gut is under huge pressure on that respect, and McCarthy wants that job, and he is just willing to do whatever he's got to do to get it. It's been fascinating to watch how blatant the flip-flops have been.
How about the vice president of the United States, Kamala Harris? I still have a hard time.
Yeah, I mean,
she had a very tough profile in the Atlantic about what she's doing. It said she's trying to have her fingers in everything instead of, trying to be focused on one particular thing. A lot of the political weaknesses that you and I have seen historically in her sort of surface.
Right. I mean, I think you got it right. That was Isaac DeVore wrote that piece, and I think it does sort of underscore what have been Kamala's sort of issues here in California. That is that feeling that she's kind of wants a stake in everything, but isn't willing to take a hard position on issues, or sort of backs away from really tough stances. She's taken on the broadband is one thing. Immigration was another thing. She's trying to bulk up her international relations credentials at the same time. On the other hand, she's gotten a lot of good press for just being there for Joe Biden, being the supportive vice president everywhere he goes, and being sort of that trusted advisor to him. So I think, we've yet to see how it's going to play out. But the Republicans are working that border and immigration issue to the max. And we'll see, if Biden is going to be able to make some substantive changes in what's happening there in the migration issue, the treatment of children.
She's supposed to be in charge of something, and she's just been basically invisible on it. She called, some guy in Costa Rica or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that's right. What we see in California, sometimes she's been good at sort of sidestepping, the fires. And we're kind of
seeing... but the conventional wisdom is that Biden, one way or the other, is a one-term president, which, kind of automatically makes her the front runner for.
Exactly. Although I'm not so sure Biden's a one-term president. I mean, we'll see. You're right. You're right. But she is most certainly positioned to be the front runner, which has got to be killing Gavin Newsom, who turned down running for that job.
Yeah. All politics is local.
Yeah.
But I think, honestly, the Republicans are salivating about her being the presidential candidate in 2024.
I think so too. I mean, when you're looking at the Florida governor positioning,
DeSantis, yeah.
You're looking at Mike Pompeo. He's clearly, positioning himself. Look, the governor of Kristi Noem, the governor of South Dakota. I mean. And of course, Nikki Haley, who's been out here in California, I think in your neck of the woods, raising money with some of the congressional folks like Young Kim and Michelle Steele. So yeah, she's plowing the ground too. It's going to be interesting to watch what comes.
And then our old friend Javier Becerra, who had been in Congress for many years and was rising in the leadership, got appointed Attorney General by Jerry Brown, took the job, then has gone on to be the HHS secretary for Biden. But he's getting a lot of heat about the border too. And apparently Biden's like yelling at him in meetings and stuff.
Yeah, a lot of people felt the HHS was not the right job for Becerra, but he's a smart guy. This is a Stanford educated lawyer, and a lot of people think getting the immigration portfolio is kind of a suicide mission from the Biden administration at this point. He has gotten dragged into it. It is a complex, horrible problem. And it has, the Republicans are watching this and using it to the max on Fox News every day. So it is a no-win situation. And you're right. Becerra has that issue and, healthcare to deal with. Let's see if he can juggle those balls. He's been an astute guy out here in California when he was AG, but this is a whole different ball game. And we'll see if he can take that heat.
Yeah, and you really do see the progressives have made huge strides with Biden on a number of issues. All this money stuff, and doing it through budget reconciliation without any Republican votes. And I think Becerra's kind of whipsawed in that as well. Let me do one more thing real quick, which I forgot to ask you about the recall. Apparently no other Democrat is going to sign up to run. And that seems to be the way the deal's going to go down.
People are still kind of holding their breath on Antonio Villaraigosa. I think he is just waiting to see what will Gavin's, numbers look like in August. And if Democrats are freaking out at that time and his numbers are in the tank, people may turn to him and say, hey, Antonio, somebody's got to be the insurance here. Fascinating thing I think that happened last week was that OAN, that very reliable network out of San Diego,
right-wing, not net.
Yeah, basically conspiracy crazy network, did a poll that said that and reported that 60% of Democrats want Tulsi Gabbard to run for governor, which is just can I just say complete BS? I mean,
Tulsi, does she live here now? Did I miss a memo?
She did live here. She moved to Mountain View to be part of a military unit there. She's no longer a congressperson, but I thought it was interesting, Jerry, the fact that OAN dropped that suggests to me that maybe some Republicans are trying to get her to get into that race. Where does that poll come from? Tulsi Gabbard? Nobody knows that. Nobody knows her here in California, or they may know her from that botched presidential campaign, or maybe her efforts at anti-trans legislation, or her anti-gay statements, that kind of stuff. But
yeah, botched. But also, I think the one thing people remember about that was the debate the night she tore Kamala's face off.
that exactly right. But for governor, what I thought that because that was dropped at OAN suggests to me maybe there's some Republicans trying to get her to do a little mischief in this thing. We're checking that one out.
All right, you heard it here first. Carla Marinucci, thank you so much, Chief. California correspondent for Politico and co-author of the daily
boss,
newsletter. Where do people go if they want to get your newsletter?
Just Google Politico California Playbook. It lands free in your inbox every day. The must-read briefing on all things California.
It absolutely is. It has everything in there that you could possibly imagine. All right, Carla, stay safe. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Talk to you soon.
Okay, Jerry, thanks. Okay.